But first, GBNews can exclusively reveal that the policing of a huge pro-Palestine protest in London this weekend will be no different from usual. That's despite Rishi Sunak demanding police chiefs do more to crack down on extremist mobs in a speech last week. So, talking today, Met Police boss Sir Mark Rowley hit back at Sunak's criticism.
In context of polarised public debate, I do think sometimes that we're the first people who are able to be labelled simultaneously woke and fascists. We have to police the law as it is, not as others would wish it to be.
Mate, the only people calling you fascists are people who don't want to get nicked for having extremists. Anyway, whatever. But could the Met not do more? Indeed, their policing of a vigil to remember Sarah Everard back in 2021 was slammed for being heavy-handed, with widespread outrage at some women even being bundled to the ground. Well, former Home Secretary Suella Braverman's had enough. She's told GBNews earlier today that it's time for deeds, not words.
I think the time for words has come to an end, and we do need to see action. You know, the next day we saw tens of thousands of people take to the streets, chanting hateful slogans and behaving in a totally unacceptable way. And we need to see a step change in the police response. They need to be enforcing the law. They need to be arresting people who are using threatening or abusive language. We need to be holding the police to account in a better way. And I would have liked to have seen an emergency law introduced to actually take steps to restrict some of these marches.
I'm joined now by a retired London police officer of 31 years. It's Norman Brennan. Norman, are the police being properly backed, do you think, or is that weak from Rowley?
The police have not been backed for many years. Mark Rowley is correct. I understand exactly where the public are coming from. I follow social media all the time. They want police to go in heavy-handed. What Sir Mark Rowley just said, and rightly so, is that the police have to act within the law, not how others would wish the law to be, which basically means he has to comply with the legislation made under statute, and some of the public want him to go in with his officers and crack a few heads. Well, the Prime Minister, I'm sure, won't be there the following day when hundreds of thousands of the public are demanding those officers be sacked, suspended and put before a discipline board.
Suella Braverman is saying, look, we need to have brought in more bespoke laws to be able to sort out what's going on the streets. Rishi Sunak said he wanted police officers to police the marches and not just manage them. Mark Rowley turns up and says, oh, we're simultaneously called woke and fascist. I do put it to you, Norman, the only people calling them fascists are people with things like paragliders on their back who don't want to get nicked for being terrorists.
You're absolutely right. Look, what the law is under the Public Order Act, it's threatening words, abusive words and threatening behaviour. And it's also a visible sign or representation. The visible sign or representation is what the paragliders were on the Max of them two girls, and the representation was the sign on Big Ben. So all of them are breaching the law when they go over all of what I've just said. However, London is like a tinderbox at the moment. The anger and the hatred amongst the hundreds of thousands, predominantly law-abiding members of the public. If there was, say, 1,500 or 2,000 officers on duty, Patrick, and we had to arrest 250 people, right, went in with the batons, it takes 2 officers per arrest. Suddenly, a third of your contingent of overseeing several 100,000 officers is reduced to such a degree that if other elements within there started sort of basically all-out public disorder, London would be in major trouble, and hundreds, if not thousands, of officers would be phoned at home. All the outside
they just don't seem to have any problem, though, Norman. They just don't seem to have any problem policing hate speech online, or they don't seem to have any problem going around to, you know, people's houses, or when it comes to things like whether or not someone's been a bit nasty on Twitter, or they don't seem to have any problem if you're a Christian preacher in the streets. I just don't understand why they seem to struggle with this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I share the frustrations as well. But, Patrick, it's not the frontline men and women. and it's the frontline men and women predominantly on social media and on the streets that get criticised. These officers are caught between a rock and a hard place. The majority of them do not want to be there. Every week, their leave is cancelled. They have to miss anniversaries, birthday presents, taking kids to school, etc. These officers want to be on their own boroughs. And these hundreds of thousands of people that come in and week out are depleting the Metropolitan Police.
In Paris, they get the water cannons out, they get the tear gas out, and these things stop, right? In Spain, we've seen it. In Italy, they do it. You do it once. It's a bit like if we'd have turned that very first boat back that's come across the channel. We wouldn't have this problem now. But we've let it happen. And so all these police officers, with respect, are going, oh, you know, they got the leave cancelled. Yeah, all right, but if they'd have sorted it out in the first place, they wouldn't be here.
It's a management issue. You highlight Paris. I've seen Paris as well, Patrick, and I've seen where the police have gone in heavy-handed, CS gas, batons, and as you rightly say, water cannons, and suddenly there's a riot. Hundreds of cars are torched, businesses are burned to the ground. And I've got to say fair play to Mark Rowley and Patrick. I criticise senior management of the police as much as anyone else. But the thing is, the Met are walking basically around a tinderbox. If that tinderbox goes up, there will be people that may well be killed, seriously injured, businesses destroyed. The Met are doing their best. And I just wish these demonstrators that have said their piece will go home, because unfortunately some elements are walking around and behaving in such a way, it's almost like for a few dollars more. That pocket watch is ticking louder and slower, and the Met are caught between that rock and the hard place, good or bad, right and wrong, and they cannot win. And I think the public have just got to be patient, because the police cannot enact laws that they cannot enforce because the law is not there, and politicians
what needs to change, right? Because, like, I would expect, and I think the vast majority of the public would expect it to be illegal to go and shout some hateful stuff, like really hateful stuff, outside Parliament, to climb a statue, to graffiti something, to do all of this. I mean, surely that is illegal.
It is. Okay. Who's going to be brave enough to take that action?
The police,
to make that decision?
Norman, I love you, man, but the police.
Yeah, no, but what I'm saying is that who is within the police going to take it? Mark Rowley is the Met Commissioner.
Yeah,
You've got Sadiq Khan, the Police Crime Commissioner. Nobody can make that decision without being criticised or feeling that what they do is for wrong. They cannot. They're between a rock and a hard place.
They're in the wrong job,
it really is
Norman,
that serious.
aren't they? They're in the wrong job.
Sorry?
You know, if they can't take a bit of criticism for enforcing the law. But look, Norman, I appreciate. I'm not trying to disagree with you. I know I don't want it to come across that way. You're a great guy, but
I see your frustration. Yeah. I share your frustration, Patrick. I share that of the public. And there was a time within policing we would rule the streets and we would take them over like the public want us to do. However, policing has changed. And sometimes, yes, there is a bit of wokeness, there is a bit of weakness. And I despair, along with the public, and even the police officers wish that they could do more than what they can currently do.
All right. Norman, thank you very much for your time this evening. We do really appreciate it. As former police officer Norman Brennan.